This is an official presentation of SDR Insider. Welcome to Mac and Zach in the Morning, your home for all things sales, business development, and beyond. With over 4 decades of combined experience in the field, please welcome your hosts and daily practitioners of the craft, Mark Mack and Zach Bauer.
All right, there we are.
Well, I was like, it's going again. Yesterday,
so good. Let's do it twice.
I know. Last night on Whiskey Wednesday too, like I thought that happened, and I realized that I had it on multiple screens, and like all of a sudden, in like halfway through their entire like intro, like they were already through the intro, they were already making introductions live, and then all of a sudden it kicked back to that on my screen, and I'm like, what the. Did I just click on something? I'm like, what? And I was gonna write in the chat like, oh, is this happening to me or just me? And then I realized it's probably just happening just me.
Yeah, no, I had that happen too, and I was all confused, so I just refreshed the page and then got caught up. But
Diego de la Vega, what's
Good
going
morning.
on, brother man? That's a great name. Like if you're cold calling and you're like, yeah, this is. I mean, he probably doesn't. You probably don't use your entire name, I imagine, but I'd be like, this is Diego de la Vega. What's going on? I love that name. It's great. I do that a lot too. Like I play with people's names because I just think it breaks the ice. Like I'm a stickler for not stickler. I'm like a cheesy stickler for like if your name is Michael McDonald, forget about it. I'm singing like what's that? Meet Me Halfway and all those Michael McDonald songs. Double M too. See, I capitalize on that. I remember John Loof. I asked John Loof, what's up, Nat? I asked John Loof one time to hook me up with a list of everybody, like whatever the person or ICP was, whatever. But I wanted all marks. Like I just wanted marks.
Yeah.
And everybody was Mark. And I remember that first day he handed me that list, I said 3 meetings and like 4 phone calls just because of the guy's name, Sorry, Nathaniel. We'll call you Nathaniel. Yeah, it was crazy. Like I changed my pitch to like, hey, Mark, this is Mark also. If they spell their name with a K, I'd be like, but I spell my name with a C. So don't hold that against me. I didn't get a choice. And, you'd get a chuckle, right? You just get the chuckle, right? When you get a chuckle, I think that is a really good thing. And like, even if it's half fake, like they're just trying to appease you, it's still, like when I go on a call, I believe that people answer their cold calls like with the barriers like right here, right?
Yeah.
And then if you're like, hey, how you doing this morning? Here goes the barrier, right? They're like, uh-oh, And so like you're starting here. So anything you can do. So if I get a little chuckle, it's kind of like, okay, here's the barrier goes here, right?
Right.
And then, I introduce myself. I give them my name and my company name, let's just say. Then it goes down here because what do they want to know? They want to know who you are. Why are you calling? And how long is this going to take? And everybody jokes about the 27-second rule, right? Or whatever, that comment. But I think that whether you say 27, a couple, a few, 2 seconds, it doesn't really matter. It's the permissive ask actually answers 2 of those 3 questions, right? You're saying who you are. Hey, this is Mark. I'm calling for a specific reason. Do you mind if I tell you why I called? Or if you say, do you mind if I take 20 seconds to tell you why I called? So now that it's answering how long is it going to take for you to tell me? Now, it doesn't matter if that conversation goes beyond the 20 seconds, right? Half the time it took you 20 seconds just to ask the permissive ask, right? And so I was always against it for that reason. Like, why ask when you're wasting your breath? You don't have that much time, so why do that? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. Like my thing has always been just say my name without even identifying a company because it
Mhm.
like I find for me personally, and this isn't a golden rule by any means, but if I say the company name, typically that puts up more barriers
Sure.
than just saying, "Hey, this is Zach," right? And then
Right.
because you say your name and not a company, a lot of times it's going to pique that curiosity. Well, Zach who, or Zach from where, or hey, you weren't expecting my call. Would you mind if I let you know why I reached out?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
It's
there's
it's
lots of things that work. That's just the thing that does it for me most of the time.
Yeah, I like, I'm a big believer of that too. I always thought Joel Wood's approach was interesting, and it's not new and it wasn't necessarily unique, but he pulled it off. I've
Yeah,
tried it in the past and I couldn't do it. He's like he uses the word it's Joel as if you know who he is.
yeah.
And then he pauses. He goes, "Hey, Zach, it's Joel." And you're like, you don't know what to say.
The
Like
pause is just fantastic right there.
it's fantastic. It's just it makes somebody. It's a huge pattern interrupt. Nobody knows what to do with it. So it kind of creates like puts you in the driver's seat immediately in a way, right? Like it's simply just saying like, okay, because if they don't know what to do with it, they're confused. You
Mhm.
could just go anywhere with that, right? Like you could say, oh yeah, we don't know each other,
Yep.
as opposed to me, like now what I've been using is, hey, this is Mark. We don't know each other, but I'm calling for a specific reason, which answers the question. Like, if I say it's Mark and they don't know who I am, they already know. So now I'm acknowledging, well, we don't know each other,
Right.
but I'm calling for a specific reason, and then I confirm their title again. I say, oh, are you still in charge of, or are you in charge of, or I've been using like, um, hey John, are you still with Canterbury Farms? Yes. Oh, out of curiosity, just so I don't waste your time,
Mhm.
are you in charge of X? And I usually get that answer. It's probably 80% I get the answer. 20% I'll get, well, who's this? Like I've asked them too many questions already, right? And
Yeah.
so that's okay. I think too many questions. You never know. Like I always push the envelope until they tell me no. The other day, I got a guy. Actually, am in the process of booking a meeting with his VP of marketing, which he wants to put me on to. But initially, what he said in the call, I called him up, and I first confirmed who he was. Hey, is this Jim Donovan? Whatever. I think it was Brian Nimmo, something like that. And he goes, yeah. And I go, are you in charge? I go, this is Mark Mack and I actually said Carrot. I said, this is Mark Mack from Carrot. Uh, I'm curious. I see your VP of sales or chief revenue officer. I forget what it was. Are you, does that include a inside business development team at all? Sales development team? He
Mhm.
goes, you haven't identified yourself. I'm like, I'm Mark Mack from Carrot, and then I whatever, or it was like the first piece. Then he said you didn't identify yourself, and then I said this is Mark Mack. Oh, then I said this is Mark Mack from Carrot.
Mhm.
We're sales development org, and then he goes, oh, I didn't say we're sales. I said it's Mark Mack from Carrot. You know, are you? And I went back to my question, and he goes, you haven't identified who you are, and I'm like, I'm Mark Mack, Jewish boy from Staten Island, Aries. I like long walks on the beach. Like, I mean, like, what do you mean I haven't identified my name is Mark? How else do you identify yourself?
Right.
I think the question he was really asking is why are you calling or what are you calling about? But that's not what he asked me.
Yeah.
I was taking him literally. How else are you supposed to take somebody, right? Initially, when you don't know them, you have to take them literally, right? And so he says, you didn't identify. So I said that, and guess what happened? He chuckled and moved on, right? I just broke up that ice like that he was trying to just push on me. And the irony of the whole situation in that particular call was the fact that he actually has a rec out for an SDR.
Huh.
And he then goes on after that. He goes, did somebody tell you to call me? And I'm like, no. And he goes, you're lying. And I'm like, I'm not lying. I'm like, no, I'm like, this is a total cold call, Matt, right? O'Brien was his name, right? I'm like, it's a total cold call. I'm like, nobody. He's like, are you sure? Nobody on my team told you to call me?
Yeah.
Then I was like, damn, I'm getting this job because, like, it's like, talk about timing, right? We always talk about
It's all
timing,
about
right?
it.
This is the best timing. He's asking me, how the hell do you have such great timing?
Yeah. The thing is, like, I think people just naturally do that in a lot of cases. They're just so standoffish, and you've always been so good at navigating that and just not being afraid to just open up and be as real as you possibly can with those people. Jewish guy from Staten Island, like nobody says
Did I say
that,
it like that?
right? Huh? Well, no, you said it in a
Were you
much
trying to
more.
do a white boy accent?
That was awful. I know. West Michigan does not do me
It's all
justice
right.
in that regard. So give me a break there. But um, so I want to get your take on this though, because I saw a thing. There's a post the other day from some well-known, I guess, SDR type outlet, and they were saying that you should never confirm or ask somebody's name when you call them, right? So if I give you a call and they say you're like, "Hello," and I say, "Hey, is this Mark?" They
Yeah.
say, "Don't do that. You should not ask that because you need to trust your data source." And I'm on the opposite side of that fence personally because I like to make sure that whoever I'm talking to is who I think I'm talking to, right? So, "Hey, is this Mark?" "Yeah." "Awesome." Like, "Mark, my name is so and so," and then go into your thing. Because a lot of times your data, even if it is trustworthy, like, it's just kind of a common courtesy too, just to make sure who you're talking to. I don't know. What's your take on that? Is that
Uh,
something that you do every time, or
yeah.
do
Every
you
time.
flex with it every time?
Absolutely. For a couple of reasons. One, you don't want to waste your breath. From Jersey. How do you know from Jersey? Oh, well, I might have said that before. Yeah. Yes. Well, I'm actually originally from Staten Island, New York, so I'm really a New Yorker. Jersey just happened to be a stop off before Florida, typically for Jewish boys. But yeah, no, I'm always So for one thing, you don't want to waste your breath, right? Like yesterday, I've been getting this a couple times with sales intel. I don't think it's sales intel per se, but because I've just had it more times with sales intel than I had with Zoom Info or Seamless. But I've been getting, like, for example, yesterday the name on the screen was Dan Wellington or something, right? And from Spilltech, and I'm like, okay. I go, I forget how the conversation started, but I go, Dan Wellington, and he goes, no, Don. Oh, Don. Oh, hey, I'm sorry. Maybe I read that wrong. I bad eyesight, whatever. Yeah, I'm reaching out. I had you as VP said da da da. This is what I'm just wondering, and blah blah blah. Is this? And he goes, I have no idea what you're talking about. I go, well, you Dan Wellington? And he goes, I'm Don Wellington. Don Wellington, and he was not from that company. Like, he was a Don Wellington, but he wasn't Don Wellington from this particular company. I've had a couple of those where the person's name is the actual name, right? It's their cell, but it's not the same Dan Smith from this company, right? And
Yeah.
I'm like, what do you do with that? You're like, oh, okay. And then I'm
Yeah.
like, well, what do you do? I'm like, I'm right there. And then one guy was like, oh, I'm a landscaper or whatever. I was just like,
Well,
well,
that
have a nice day.
that opens up another can of worms, right? We talk about data validation.
Absolutely.
To what extent is that data being validated, right? Is it a
By
phone
me.
call? Hey, is this Dan Wellington? Click, you know,
Yeah.
but then you end
You're
up
right.
with the wrong one. Um,
It is human verified too. This was Sales Intel's human verified data. So they're just pinging the email, and then maybe they're making a call and hearing the voicemail, and then they catch Dan Wellington, but it was actually Don Wellington. They didn't understand. I don't know.
yeah,
Yeah, maybe it's happened a few times to me, but so definitely don't want to waste your breath. That's the first thing answer to that question. And the second thing is, it's natural for people to want to hear their name. It just is a human condition, really. I mean, I don't like when you're in a restaurant and you hear Zach, and there could be three Zachs in the room, and you're like, you look, right, because why not? That's your name. So everybody likes their name. Everybody likes to hear their name. And then if you're in a position of authority, especially if you're a baby boomer or older, yeah, I'm Mark. You know, it's like they stick their chest out when you ask them who they are. Typically, if
Right.
it's like, this is Mark Mack? Yeah, Mark Mack. What do you want? Like, who's this? Like, you know what I mean? So there's like a bit of it. You want to play into that ego. You want them to feel like they're controlling that, like they're in charge, right? Oh, yes, this guy just said my name. Great. And then it's like, and then the question of who's in charge of, right? This whole route thing that Justin Michael talks about too, but it's about knowing that you're talking to the right person, so you're not wasting your time.
Yep.
And that it makes sense for you to continue with whatever you're going to say next, right? Because like if it's not that person, which is okay, there's easier pivots from there. Oh, I thought this was John Smith's line. Oh no, it is. I'm his assistant. Oh, okay, cool. When's he going to be back? So you could always kind of pivot from there. Obviously, if it's a woman's voice and you're calling a man's name out, unless their name's Carrie or Julie, which I found to be guys' names too. But yeah, I'm definitely a fan of making sure I am talking to who I am trying to reach.
Mm-hmm.
With that kind of routing type thing. Oh, Mark Mack. Okay, great. Sometimes I leave the last name out and I just go right into it, especially if they answer the phone. Hey, this is Zach, or Zach Bauer. They've already said their whole name. Like,
Yeah, and then
I'm not going to
you're good
probably
to go.
say it. Yeah, I'm going to be like, hey, Zach, how's it going? This is Mark Mack. We don't know each other, but I was calling for a specific reason. Boom.
Yep.
It's so funny. I mean, Steve Schmidt and his 3P thing, right? I at first I was like, oh, okay, just like everything, anybody else's things, like all the other methodologies and frameworks and things like that I've learned and heard and taught and coached on and whatever. But I use it. I just use it. It's just natural right now. I think it's disarming. Oh, you don't know me? I'm like, hey, we don't know each other, but I'm calling for a specific reason. And I think that resonates also with me when I say that and with other people, because then they're waiting for what's the specific reason.
Right.
Right. And then I can kind of pivot and go, because I'm calling for a specific, I don't say this part, but because I'm calling for a specific reason, assuming that statement is there, I say, look, I don't really want to waste your time with this specific thing I'm calling about. So are you specifically involved with, I don't say specific, but it's like, are you in charge of this? Right. So I get away with asking that third or second question. Right. And then it's like, oh, you're in charge of that. Great. Now, for me now, it's what's been really great in this new opportunity, this new venture is I'm finally calling salespeople, VPs of sales, directors of sales.
Yeah.
Their information, their data is like 99.9% accurate from every resource, from every data source, and they answer the phone. What I will say is it shocks me at least once a day. There's at least one senior salesperson or senior sales director, VP, that like either hangs up on me or is like all kinds of twisted in the call and just like runs me over or runs off the phone right away, hangs up or whatever. And
Right.
it blows my mind. I'm almost like, I've come to the realization with that now that their organization, their sales organization might be okay, but they're just okay. Because if they've got a leader with an attitude like that, right, who just was, I get it, you're busy, you don't have time for me, I get it, but there is a way, being from that ilk, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
I think that you could just get me off the phone in a much more, I don't know, I guess that's just about me, my feelings. Or maybe it doesn't really matter. Look, I'm fucking busy. Boom.
Yeah.
I don't know. I do have a tendency to be a little pushy, but it's like, I don't
But
get that.
most sales leaders I've found appreciate that to a large degree if you do it well, right? Not you just keep hammering your script over and over. You know what I mean?
No.
But if you have a good approach, usually it's appreciated at least, and they'll hear you out, I think.
Yeah, I'm actually putting together right now. Somebody told me a long time ago, and I think this worked against me for a couple of interviews, but they said, talking about documenting your journey and documenting your successes and things like that, why that's important is because you want to be able to share it. You want to be able to reflect on it, say in a future interview or a future meeting with somebody where it makes sense to bring that stuff up.
Yeah.
Your success or even compliments. And so what I've been doing, I've got testimonials on my livecoldcalls.com website of people who've worked with me and have had success after a couple of sessions, and things like after one session. And I've put that up there so that, people can see it. And it's always good to have those testimonials. Every website has testimonials, right?
Right.
But what I've been doing lately is catching calls where, like, I've had several, call it non-interested calls, where they've stopped in the call and complimented my approach. And complimented, like one guy was like, man, if I was in the market for your services, I would definitely take a run at you. Which I don't understand what that meant, but but he'll take a run at me. Yeah, no, he and then so I've been clipping those and like piecing them together, so that I can like if somebody says, oh, do you have some kind of proof, social proof? And I'll just go, here, listen to this.
Yeah.
And it'll be like 10 people saying how awesome I am.
That's a good play. I like that.
I don't know. I mean, we got a guy yesterday. Listen, I think, look, salespeople, confident salespeople or semi-confident salespeople or people who are doing well, be it anybody that we know, everybody we've talked about in the last couple of weeks and stuff, you got to have a little bit of an ego. You can't do this without that, Later, Diego. You got to have that. You got to, like you said, maybe you say things that you wouldn't otherwise say to kind of disarm the situation or whatever. You just got to have those balls, or in a female's case, just confidence. But like I think that's what's really, in some cases, has made my job much more fun, in that sense. Like yesterday, I had a guy who, I'm calling for an investment firm and we're looking for businesses to buy, right? And I called up this one guy and it said he was the president of the company. However, that doesn't necessarily imply he's an owner, right? And I don't really want to have a conversation with anybody but an owner because I'm asking them if they want to sell their company or have an investment in their company. And so anybody else in the organization doesn't matter. And so, well, not that they don't matter, but they're just not going to be able to pull the trigger.
Influence that.
Yeah. And so this guy yesterday, after I said, hey, I have you as president over there. I'm not sure if you could speak to this or not. And then I said, I'm not sure if you could speak to the ownership side of the business. And he goes, no, I'm not an owner. I said, well, I'm curious. That's okay. Who is that? And he goes, well, what's this regarding? And I go, well, it's it's about the business. And then I told him, I was like, I represent an investment firm. They're interested in the business. I was wondering if the owners may or may not have been considering an exit over the next couple of years. And he's like, no. And so I'm like, okay. I'm sorry. I recall you just saying you're not one of the owners. He goes, I'm not. And I go, well, then how does that give you position to make a call like that? And he goes, are you getting wise? And I'm like, no, I'm not getting wise. I'm asking you a straight up question. Like, you just said you're not an owner. So how is it that you can attest or comment on the fact on whether or not, the owners are actually willing to sell? Because they wouldn't tell you.
Right.
Unless you're actually looking to buy it yourself, which happens, right? So I didn't take that for granted, but I was just like, and he was like, when he said, are you getting wise with me? And I was like, no, I'm not getting wise with you. And then I just hung up because I was like, this is not going good.
Yeah. How do you recover from that one?
I didn't. I just hung up. I just said, you know what? I'll let you go. Have a nice day. And I
Yeah.
hung up. I like that. I didn't just hang up. Like I always say goodbye. But like, yeah. I mean, sometimes there's people out there, and it's not a matter of like, did you catch them at a bad time in the day? Are they not feeling? I'm not talking about that. There are people that are naturally just going to be standoffish, like you said,
Yep.
or jerks. I don't think with the job that we have as SDRs, BDRs, AEs, sales reps, whatever, that if you really want to survive in this game, you can't let that stuff actually
No.
happen in a way, right?
No.
I always am a believer of hang up first if you have to. Like, don't let somebody just run you over, even though I said that other guy ran me over. But yeah, I just think like if you could just go, hey, you know what? Sounds like I caught you at a bad time. I'll try another time. Have a good day. Click.
Yeah.
Don't let them hang up on you.
And
You know what? You'll feel a lot better about it.
that's the thing. Like, it's really easy, especially when you're first getting used to situations like that, to try to convince somebody that you're worth their time to have a conversation with. And there's a certain point where it's just not worth it to even attempt that, because maybe there's a chance maybe it's an off day for them and you can call them back later and pick that up. But if that's just their natural personality, like why fight it? There's nothing to gain from that, in my opinion.
No, definitely not. I mean, yeah, it's like there's no reason to start an argument with somebody. I mean,
Right.
that doesn't really make sense. I mean, I've gotten close, but it's like, I just say things sometimes that it doesn't really matter, right? There's just there's so many places, people to call, there's so many opportunities. You're never going to some people are like, they fear it, right? They fear that they're going to piss somebody off, or that they're going to, get in trouble, or their manager's going to hear the call and they're going to get in trouble. If you have a really good manager, he'll be on your side no matter what, unless you say to him, F you, or her. But it's like you just, in this role this thing that we do every day, sales life, SDR life, you got to do things that round the situation out. It's like, we know it's hard. We know you're going to get hung up on, but sometimes you got to hang up on other people, right? Like, that to me makes it better. That to me makes it, like, sounds weird, but it'll make it fun. It's not the specific fun I want to have when I'm on the phone. Fun is actually having great conversations and closing deals.
Yeah.
But like, I'm just saying, like, it makes all the nonsense, of it all a lot better when you're nipping stuff in the bud like that. Like, you're not letting people hang up on you, or you hang up on somebody, or you just say something, from left field. Who cares? What do you have to lose? You really have nothing to lose. You have no, like, I mean, and we had a discovery call yesterday or 2 days ago, and the company, I think I told you this last night, right? The company was a little taken back for a second on the price. They were like, whoa. It's because they never worked with a true kind of boutique outsourced business development group before. They also never heard what they heard from us before. They hired people overseas, Philippines or places like that. And so those people, appointment setters, cold calling, call center, really. That's not what we do. But it was understandable that they were going to be taken back, but it was important for us to at least talk those general pricing, because why continue the conversation if it was totally out of the ballpark, right? It was out of the ballpark because they never have spent that kind of money for this type of service before, right? They also felt like, oh, well, I could get a junior person to bang the phones, right? But
Yeah.
we focused on, that's not who we are, what we do, and why that model doesn't necessarily always work or it churns out, right? And that's the
Right.
key thing about outsourced sales development, which was brought up last night. And I'll say this to the masses, is that, and I said this the other day to a guy, I was talking to him about outsource, and I was like, the positions, we work with a lot of CEOs and VPs of sales who find it, sometimes it's very difficult to recruit, hire, train, manage, and retain top of funnel business development reps, because they typically churn out.
Right.
We don't churn out. It was my follow-up to that. Like, our team is here. We're always going to be here. I mean, if we trade out a BDR here and there, whatever, right? But we're always going to be here. We have a model in place. We have a framework, and everybody follows that for success.
Mm-hmm.
And so it doesn't matter, maybe 6 months from now, I put a different person on your account, because we've already replicated it over and over again. The next person's going to be able to do the same thing, and if they can't, then the previous person comes back in and helps them out or whatever. But the point is that it's like, you don't, they weren't, they were unsure about the pricing. So we started digging a little bit more to their pain and their problem, and how they are thinking about it, and how we're thinking about why our model's successful and theirs is going to prove not to be, potentially, or prove just to be a lot harder to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a point of bringing in the numbers, and then they were curious to know, well, what is that going to yield us, right? Like, how do we know that's going to work, or at that price, or, what's the guarantee? And, it was sort of back and forth. And so I just came out and said, well, I got you on the phone, didn't I?
Uh-huh.
You guys are sitting here right now in front of us, right? That's what we do. And the guy was like, you're right. Yeah. Both of them, like the two of them, because the first person the second guy, this guy Adam, I never spoken to. It was just me and this other guy Scott, and now it's like my principal, me, Scott, and him, and like, and they were like, I guess you're right. And I was like, you get me. I'm the guarantee, right? I'm the one that's going to make sure this is successful. I'm the one that's going to be setting it up, and even if it's not 100% me, let's say it's one of my team, they're just as good as me, if not better. But everybody has a ramp period, of course, but like, it's, and I just use that, and I think you could do the same thing when if you're setting up discovery calls, and then you're conducting the discovery call, just remember that, like, I got you on the phone, didn't I?
Yep.
If there could have questioned whether or not, oh, I got to pay you guys $5,000 plus $500 a meeting. Well, how do I know I'm going to get any? Well, first of all, you don't have to pay the $500 if I get you no meetings, right? Now, the other thing too, and this is really, really important that people don't seem to understand, and I think some of the BDOs out there might even not think about this as well, is the fact that you might get an account that doesn't yield any meetings. Why? Mm-hmm. Because there's no product market fit. They haven't identified the right persona with the right problem, who are willing to do something about it. They might be slightly off. They might really need to be shooting for mid-market instead of SMB. Maybe they go big and they want to go enterprise, realize they can't go enterprise. They could probably sell into enterprise, but being the fact that that's a 12 to 18 month sales cycle, in some cases, you're going to drown before you're able to actually make any money. Right. And so maybe you can't go that way. So start mid-market or SMB. So, you might take an engagement, and we talk to people about this. Hey, if you haven't done this like upfront work of identifying your ICP, knowing exactly what problem you solve, who you solve it for, and whether or not those people are willing to do something about it, and where are those people, right? Are they on LinkedIn? Are they on Facebook? Do they prefer the phone, text message? Yesterday, I spoke to 3 people. I didn't speak to them. Their voicemail, 3 people's voicemails say text me, which is weird. Like, I always say, okay, I've tried the cold call text or cold text. It doesn't work. But now these people are telling me to text them. So is that an invitation to text them? Well, no, not really, because it's still a cold text, right? Just because they say text me on the voicemail, their outbound voicemail, when they say text me, they're assuming that you might know who they are. I think, or at least that's my
kind of a gray area there.
It is gray. Yeah. There was a poll yesterday, I think, or the other day, and somebody was asking about cold text. Is that, oh no, the question was, what's the most unethical cold outreach? And it was like cold email, cold phone, cold text. And I said cold text because,
well, it's illegal to cold text.
I mean, is it?
Yeah.
How do you get caught?
FCC report.
If somebody reports you, I guess if somebody reports.
I wasn't even aware of that being a big thing. It's not really talked about like that widely in our industry, it seems like. Um, but then again, I don't know how common it is to cold text either.
It's not. How
Yeah,
about fax? That's actually illegal.
is
That
it?
is like officially illegal, and that's that's FCC, because once you put it in the machine, right, just like a text message, I guess, is going over the airwaves. So anything over the
Yeah,
air. It's interesting.
makes sense.
Can we cold call live right now and not say we're on a recorded line? That's illegal, right?
Yeah,
I don't know. You're all on a recorded line. I think people, it's funny, if you say that to somebody, chances are, I think they'll be on their better behavior, maybe. Like, you won't
probably. Yeah,
get the jerk offs, maybe. Oh, I'm gonna record a line. Or those people just hang up on you, thinking
yeah.
obviously it's a telemarketing call. You say, I always felt like if you say, hi, you're on a recorded line with Mark. How's it going today? Click.
Yeah. I I mean, I can't say that I wouldn't be standoffish about that. I don't think I would take a call like that. So I can't hold it against people if they're not about it. No big deal.
You know what it is? At the end of the day, I always feel like, why be a jerk? Like, we're all trying to do our jobs. It's like, isn't there some empathy by anybody these days? But you know what I did want to talk a little bit about is LinkedIn, and I kind of want to ask you. Okay, so there was a point in time where you were not posting anything, you were not actively kind of like, or active as active as you are right
Mhm.
now. Obviously, you've got 2 podcasts and you're posting every day. But how did it start? Like, did you start from completely zero and went to like 15, and then now you're at like 50 or 80? But how did it go for you?
I As far as, like, number of connections or followers
No, no,
or
I
what?
just meant like in your routine day in, day out. Like, one day you weren't posting anything, you weren't known, you were nobody, you had no podcast, you had nothing.
Yeah.
And then it started, and I don't care how quickly it grew. I was
Yeah.
just saying, like, you went from zero to starting to do it, right?
Yeah, so, like, really, I'm not even big on social media in general, right? Like, I don't even like it. LinkedIn is kinda one of those things where it's like, it's a necessity, right? And not to say that, like, I don't find it valuable because I do. It's just like, I don't naturally, like, I don't go on social media, like, for fun, right? Like, I don't do Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. It's not my thing.
Right.
Um, so if I look back, I think I first kinda dipped my toe in the water on the LinkedIn thing, probably like 2016, 2017, somewhere around there, and I wrote an article, and I just, at the time, I just happened to be looking out my window, watching a robin looking for worms, and somehow, like, that turned into an analog for sales, right? And,
Hmm.
like, shutting up and listening and, finding the prize, right? By not being loud and boisterous, and that was, like, an article I put together, but I felt like at that time, it wasn't really, like, I was probably really, really concerned about people judging, like, my thoughts there, right?
Hmm.
And didn't really stick with it. So, after that, it was probably a pretty long gap, like an occasional post here and there, and
Hmm.
then when I started working in the marketing space, I don't know, like a year, almost 2 years ago now, um, there was a lot of encouragement there to start, like, kinda ramping that up, but I didn't really understand how to do it at that point. So it was like, I'll just give some marketing facts and stuff like that, you know what I mean? Um, and now, like, I kinda committed to doing it for 30 days and see what happens, and then that kinda transformed into doing it twice or 3 times a day, and now it's just kind of a habit. Like, I take, like, Sundays off now, uh, and I don't worry about it so much,
Hmm.
but I try to be consistent with it.
Do you think that anybody can be taught how to, like I'm last night there was this, we were talking about this, right? We were talking about these people who coach you or train you or teach you how to use LinkedIn for what? Like for business or for whatever you want it for. And I think that's probably how they start off, right? Like anybody who's going to coach you on how to use LinkedIn to any kind of advantage, the first thing they're going to ask you if they're smart is what do you want to use it for? Right? Like what is your mission? You got to decide that, and if it's like, you just want to, share your expertise, that's fine. You want to share stories about sales, that's fine. That has nothing to do with whether or not you want to develop business off of that, right? For us, like you and I and other people that work for business development, outsourced business development organizations, and this is what I mentioned this a while back, was it's kind of hard when you have 4 companies. Like I was working for 4 companies, right? And I have 4 advisory roles on my LinkedIn page. And then I have my own business, RLM Consulting. And then I was with Title. And so it's like, oh my God. And I have all these to presence. And so it's like people are going to go to my page and be like, what does this fucking guy do? Right? Like I'm not going to hire him because he looks like he's spread thin through like a multitude of companies. And while that might actually be true, it doesn't mean I couldn't take on your business, but it doesn't allow me to present myself like as an expert in the field of conversational AI for interactions, right?
Right.
It didn't allow me to present myself as an expert in logistics when I worked with Idelic, right? Whatever it was. And I never used LinkedIn there to go after that customer base or that, prospect that customer base because, it just didn't make any sense. And I've been using LinkedIn, of course, just to share my expertise, right? Like to share with the world, with SDRs, that the phone isn't really is your friend, and it's not something you should fear. And like, take it from me, I do it day in and day out. I'm in the trenches, and some of the stuff that I talk about actually could work if you try it. May not work for you, but it's worked for me. It's worked for other people I've helped. So maybe you could try it. But at the same time, it's like that never got me business for my customers. What's nice now is now that I'm in a role where I can actually push the company, like you are now in the kind of sales role where you're trying to get people to use the Sellex platform, or to, come on and join the program there. It's like you now have that audience that you could speak to. But at the same time, I still believe you shouldn't connect and pitch, right? Like use your platform to talk about the success that you have, to talk about how you help your clients, to talk about what it means to be an SDR and the trials and tribulations. And then they're going to naturally see you because I, like in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I've connected with so many more CEOs and VPs of sales in the tech world, in the logistics world, and software, and HR and what have you, that I never did before, because I'm actually asking for the connection, right? And now I have a service that they may at some point be interested in.
Right.
And I think that's hard, right? And so there's a lot of people out there who are LinkedIn trainers and coaches and whatever, but it's like, what are they really telling you? Like I don't think everybody has the, like, they try to say, oh, everybody's got something worth saying. That's true. And you could build somebody up. You could build up their confidence that what they're thinking and what they have to say is just as important as everybody else. But they just don't know how to put it on paper, right? They just don't know how to formulate it in a way. So you're going to teach them how to do that? Write content? If they're not already, I mean, my thought process is they have to start, right? Just like we had to do this. We just had to start, right? We can't contemplate. So you could coach and train and this and that, but like if they don't do it, it's not going to work, right? If they don't want to do it, it's not going to work. If they don't have the, like, I don't know if you could teach it. I mean, maybe you could, but it's like, are you going to, like, if they said, oh, I will do it for you, I'll write the content for you, that's a whole other ballgame, right? That's great. That's probably what you want, right? Because if you can't write, or you don't know the formatting, or you don't know what's going to attract people, 1 coaching session, 2 coaching sessions is not going to help you.
Right.
I don't understand I would probably love to take the class, but I mean, it's like, I kind of go like this to people who are trying to pitch me those services, because I am regularly posting, because I am regularly engaging, like I'm regularly, I don't go scroll through my feed like for hours, during the week. It's only a little bit, and it's probably just whatever you're posting, whatever Landon's posting, or whatever,
Yeah.
and so I don't like, stay on my feed trying to figure out what's interesting, what do people want to hear. You just analysis paralysis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, you just got to start, you just got to post, you just got to not be, in that mindset like nobody wants to hear me or my shit isn't good or whatever, and just do it and see what happens. But it doesn't mean you're going to necessarily, I mean, if your mission is to find your prospects on LinkedIn and connect with them and show them that you're a thought leader in the space, or that you're an expert in the space, and hopefully they come in organically, or even if you've got a DM sequence where you thank them for connecting and then you send them something, give, and then they come back to you at some point, that's great, right? But I don't know, man. I don't think, some people have it and some people don't. I don't know how much of like the content creation really is teachable.
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of it's a mixed bag. I think like there's parts of it that you could probably teach. Like there's like copywriting, for example. I think you could probably learn how to do that better. Now, I guess copywriting, a lot of that is the way that you phrase things, and like how you break up your sentence structure and different things like that, and how do you draw people into a story, right? Because there's like a good format to do that, and like creating a hero and that sort of thing. On the flip side of that, like the content of that story is going to be very much dependent on you as a person, right? So like I this is something I struggle with. It's like the more things you do, the more things you can write about,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So if you're not doing enough, you might not have uh, a wide enough library of content that you could possibly put together from that, because experience is the thing that drives your content. And I don't mean just sales experience, it could be life experiences or anything. Um, and I have definitely gone through moments and phases where I'm like, I just have content for days, it feels like, and I've got so much to write about. And then there's definitely walls, like I have been in the last, I don't know, week or so, where there's not as much to pull from, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my personal take, like, there's a lot of people that like to get like very vulnerable on social media. Um, that's not my thing typically, and that has
Yeah.
absolutely nothing to do with me not being a human.
Right.
It has to do with me, uh, you know, wanting to put that much of my personal life out there,
Right.
right? Like for example, talking about kids and like family and stuff like that. Like I try to insulate my kids from that. So like you
Mm-hmm.
won't ever see me put pictures of them, on there and talk about that, because that's not my thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's
on the
respectable.
on the flip side of that, like I talked about, deciding not to drink, right? And in my journey with that for the last 8 months, and that definitely impacted and resonated with some people, which was really cool to see. But to me, those are two different things completely.
Oh,
So
you
it,
personal bout and family thing. I mean, I could understand trying to keep like my there was a time, and I think it was because my wife is a children's mental health therapist or whatever, but like she didn't want us posting anything about the kid even on Facebook.
Mhm.
Um until he was like, a certain age. Like now she does like the first day of school kind of stuff and whatever, but I appreciate that. I think, trying to insulate your family from the public eye, it's like you say that like it's like with some kind of celebrity, but it's true though.
No,
Like,
no.
it's no, I'm not throwing shade at that. I was just thinking that like it's important to do that. It's important to keep that stuff separate to a certain degree. And if you can, it doesn't make you less what's the word, less genuine or less of a human, because you don't,
Right.
But I think the point about not having the creative juice for a day or two is fine.
Hmm.
I get it. Sometimes the day goes by so quick, and because I have a lot of content, even in storage for that matter, I forget. Oh, I didn't post today. Like I'm finding myself now going back into my like posting activities to see, did I post today? I forget.
Yeah.
Because I'll like and I'll share some other people's stuff, and I think that's just as good. I think there are definitely things you could teach, right? Like there are some basics. Is it worth, you know does it require like 6 4-hour sessions with a guru to figure out how to become it, to become good at it? No.
Right.
There are some basic things that I just learned and picked up from other people, like one of the biggest tips that I got as far as being able to create LinkedIn content, and I use this almost every day, is that if you're engaging on other people's posts, and it's so funny how all of a sudden LinkedIn kind of woke up to this too, because they ask you, when you put a comment, if the comment's more than like 5 words, it'll drop this little kind of indicator that says, do you want to share this as a post?
Yeah.
Right? They didn't have that for a long time, right? And then all of a sudden, like, that was one of the biggest tips. Like, how do you create content? Well, it could be a conversation you're having with somebody else on another post that you could turn into a post. And I think a couple of times in the last few weeks, I just clicked share and I posted that like comment that I made, and then I added a little bit to it. But like, that's a kind of like a rule of thumb to help you develop content. Somebody told me, have the piece of paper by the bed, or write the stuff down, or block out a time for content, and then just write everything you could possibly think of in that moment, whether it's a Sunday or a Saturday while you're looking at the robin on the deck, right? I mean, there are a lot of those things, but at the end of the day, putting it out there and actually writing it and producing it and sending it or whatever, posting it, and being consistent with that is just really the key. If you really want it to have an impact on your business, I think, or,
Hmm.
again, I think it all comes back to like, what do you want out of it? Right. Some people don't want anything out of it. And I wrote this a couple of times last night. If you saw, again, most people still talking like this world of ours is the only group of salespeople in the world, but there are millions of salespeople who are extremely successful, don't use LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram at all. Some of them don't even use the phone. They're all face to face, right? But it's like we talk about it sometimes, I think, or people around us talk about it as if it's, there's no other way. You have to
Yeah.
do it this way. You have to do it that way.
And it's funny too, because in a lot of ways, it becomes an echo chamber. And I talk about this a lot, where like the pattern interrupt becomes the pattern, and that
Absolutely.
you see that happen so much. Um, and I don't know what the way is to kind of like explore or inject some of that, outside information that we in the SaaS space in particular get just bombarded with, right? Like a lot of it is kind of recycled information or just a little bit different. Um, and it's very easy to get wrapped up in that. I don't know. Do you have any ideas about how to start drawing more of that in? Like I've talked about like my experience selling motorcycles and things like that.
Yeah.
And aspects of
Starts
that have helped me a lot in
that
this
start
journey.
It starts there. It starts there, Look, there's a big you know who it is, Dale Dupree, right? And his sales rebellion.
Yeah.
I mean, I read a post yesterday with a guy who talked about his journey as a rebel, and man, they're having success writing hard copy, direct mail.
Yeah.
Now, granted, Dale's biggest thing was that when he was the copier rep, he would physically deliver that letter, that
Right.
crumpled letter or that coffee stain letter or whatever. And by the way, anybody's listening who doesn't know who Dale Dupree is, DaleDupree, he runs a group called the Sales Rebellion, and they do things differently, man. He's got a good brand there, and I admire some of this stuff. I had bought his crumpled letter campaign, or his coffee stain letter campaign, and I sent a few of those out, but I didn't do it consistently, and that was the problem. That's why it wasn't successful for me. But his thing was, and I know how this could work, because you go in and you hand the assistant there at the desk this letter that's crumpled up, and you're asking her or him to bring it back to the person you want, and like there's just something magical about that face-to-face thing. But I think it still could work. Like the coffee stain letter thing could work in, or any kind of direct mail piece could potentially work today, especially today, more so than years ago, because nobody's doing it. The only people that are doing it are the rebels, or at least in the SaaS tech space or in that printing space or whatever. But, go to my, look, 20 years I was a field rep, right? So I was always face to face. There was, and if I had sent a letter, I sent letters when there was no email back in the day. But like, just even physically, something like your business card, leaving your business card. And then it's like, there's some kind of something there of yours. And then they, you call them the next day and they're like, oh yeah, I got your card here. I see you showed up yesterday, blah, blah, blah. So, there are ways, that we don't talk about as much that could be explored. Everyone's just trying to write the better email. They're trying to, figure out what the next best opener is on a cold call. They're trying to figure out, do I gap sell them or challenger sell them down the sales process line? There are so many other ways you can do these things. And you talk about saying like, oh, I want to learn from other industries. Invite them in. Like I love one of the greatest things about the Discord and the Hype Cycle channel, Justin Michael's Hype Cycle. It used to be a lot, of course, SaaS when I first started in there, but I don't know how it happened, but we got all kinds of people that came around: real estate, financial, sales reps, and it does bring a lot of perspective. In fact, I find that like what's real interesting, and maybe this is where the tech ego comes from, is that those people express how much they learned from this side of the business.
Yeah.
So.
That's such a good point.
But yeah,
they don't communicate all the time, right? If you've got, especially on LinkedIn, if your circle is only tech people and not real estate people, you might not be seeing those things.
If I call up my old friends from Sherwin-Williams that are still there, that are out banging the pavement and visiting people face to face, and I said, hey, do you know what a sales engagement platform is? They're gonna be like, what?
Well, what's funny is where I learned about cold calling and power dialers and all those things was from a real estate guy. Like that's how I learned really the basics and the fundamentals. And it was just watching videos of this guy making calls and picking up on what he was doing and his approach. And I'll talk more about that later when the time is right. But it's funny. We get stuck in this tech bubble, and there's a lot out there to learn.
That's a huge topic, and we can go on for days about that. But this was a great session. I definitely want to let the audience know that anybody who is listening, if you guys want to come on to the show and chit chat with us, I think we're going to start a couple of new things coming up in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned. SDR Insider. We got a couple of cool things coming down the pike. We're going to go audio maybe one of these weeks. Right?
Yeah,
we'll do a LinkedIn audio thing.
Got to get that spun up.
Yeah, but no, man. Listen, Whiskey Wednesdays. Everybody doesn't know it. Check out Whiskey Wednesdays. Check out SDR Insider, Mac and Zach in the morning. Appreciate everybody tuning in. And then the other thing is too, we got to get these up on the podcast channels.
Yeah,
so that people can listen who don't want to watch. So we're gonna get that to you guys soon too as well. So.
Cool.
Any last words?
Yeah, we'll see you next Thursday, 8 a.m. Eastern.
Word.